All right. Hello, hello. I didn't hear the little sound that the app normally makes, so I think I'm live, but I was waiting for it to, but that didn't happen. So, anyways, welcome everybody. It's nice to have our regular Wednesday programming back. I got pretty out of the flow of our Wednesday evening show when I was on tour because it just was not possible to do an amp show every Wednesday evening, obviously. But it's nice to have this back. It's something that I would look forward to every Wednesday. It kind of gave me a little bit of routine in my life that sometimes lacks routine. And I don't know about you, but I'm a routine person. Anyways, all that to say, it's good to be back. I loved our episode last week with Alona. That was so inspiring. And it kind of did help me get in the right mindset about New Year's and, setting New Year's resolutions, or just not even New Year's resolutions, because I feel like those get a really bad rap, but just the idea of having a fresh start with the world and all things. But anyways, today I'm really excited. In a little bit, we're going to have my really good buddy, Stephen Mallett, call in. He is a longtime collaborator of mine. And I'm just excited to talk about creativity with him, and also not only creativity, but how to, stay sane as a creative. I feel like sometimes creative minds like to run wild and like to, we're a little bit out there, but at the same time, we sometimes as creators feel really extreme highs and lows. We feel the exciting things really strong. We feel the things we're passionate about really strong, but we also, as a result of that, feel the lows really strong too. So I don't know if that's something that you guys can relate to at all. Because I think at the end of the day, everyone is creative. I think that sometimes I read this amazing book. It was called The Artist Way, and it just talked about how, of course, some people maybe are a little more in tune with their creativity and it comes a little easier for them or more naturally, but every single person was created. We were all created by someone who was a creator. And if you want to go, in a very biological sense, that can be your parents created you. And then we have the ability to create. But if you want to go into a bigger perspective, it's like, oh my gosh, we are all created by, something greater than us. And, in my perspective, that's God, and for whatever purposes you feel your spirituality, it can be whatever that may be to you. But we were created to create, whether it's life or ideas or art, and that's one of the beautiful things about existing. And so, I loved the perspective of that book, that just we were created by the most creative being and we're meant to create. Yeah, I think I might kick it off with a song here in a second, because Steven gave me a playlist of a few songs. So while we're waiting for him to call in, let's just go ahead and play one of the songs he recommended. I think, let's see, I listened to just a preview of each of these. I want to save one of them for later. Or no, maybe we'll start with it because it just was ooh, I wanted to listen to this song more when I previewed it. It's from the new Avatar movie, which was so good. I am a big fan of the first Avatar film. I think that, I don't know, it was just stunningly beautiful. And this one was even more gorgeous to watch. It's very long, and a lot of times when I'm in movies that are too long, I kind of can't wait to leave the theater. But I didn't feel like that about this one. I was really into the whole thing. They totally had me enraptured in this world. And I kept every once in a while just becoming aware that oh my gosh, these aren't real people. How is this all computer generated? It's absolutely stunning. So and this song is from the soundtrack. And so I'm really grateful that Steven kind of brought the music to my attention, because in the film I was just so focused on the visuals. But here is From Darkness to Light. Also, I was intrigued by the name. I just think that's a great concept right there. It's something that I feel like rules a lot of, the art in my life, is this contrast between darkness and light. So this is from the new Avatar, The Way of Water, suggested by Steven. Here we go. Whew, that was so good. Oh my gosh, I've really been enjoying music in that vein lately. When I'm driving or when I'm have some time to listen to music lately, instead of putting on a pop song or something, electronic, which is kind of my go-to in the past, I just want something calming. Like I'm finding myself going to like Enya, which I feel almost silly saying that, but actually I don't. Enya's great music. So yeah, no shade in that. But yeah, I'm finding myself really being drawn to like something calming and something rejuvenating for my soul. And anyway, so that one really spoke to me. I was so excited when I saw it on the list. I saw a couple questions in the chat, so I'll just answer those real quick. Let's see. I love that you guys were all like, ooh, enjoying how peaceful it was. But someone, Saral Good, was asking what was the name of the book I was talking about. It's called The Artist Way. It's a great book, and it's basically helps people unlock the creative process. And it's a book, but also it has like workbook assignments in it. So like kind of things that you need to do along with the reading to help unlock your creativity. It's really great. I think I read it before I wrote it was either Shatter Me album or, yeah, I think it was before I wrote Shatter Me, or while I was writing Shatter Me, I read it. And then Anavar was asking, how is my resting time, or how is it rejuvenating my creative side? Yeah, it's good. It's always weird coming off tour, but I'm feeling pretty good. I've been patient with myself through the process, and I'm allowing myself permission to just, I guess some days permission to be a little bit sad, if that's the case, because I've talked about it before, post-tour blues is a thing, and not getting mad at myself for being like, why are you depressed today? It's like, oh, today's just a little bit harder of a day, and I'll get through it. And, hopefully tomorrow will get better, and usually it is. I feel like I've almost come out of my post-tour blues, and I'm doing really well. And also giving myself permission to, like, a lot of times I'm really hard on myself when I have free time, and when I do relax, I'm like, I should be doing something, I should be creating something, and I'm really just telling myself, nope, you're allowed to take another bath. You're allowed to go on another walk. Like, take it all in pace. And I have started writing again, and I feel like I'm going to enjoy the process of writing this album. I'm determined to make this one fun and exciting and not stressful. So anyways, thanks for checking in on me. And someone saying they just recently ordered my book, DJ H Tunes. I hope you enjoy it. And let's see. Oh, Roxy says we have post-concert blues. Oh, you're so sweet. I loved that last tour. It was so fun. So now I'm going to invite in my guest. As I've said, my guest today is Stephen Mallett. He is a longtime collaborator of mine. He's a dear friend at this point because we've done so many projects together and worked so closely together and been able to relate on so many different topics, from some of our past history that we've both experienced individually, but also just our creative processes. And anyway, so he is just a dear friend of mine, and I'm really excited to chat with him today. So bringing in my guest, Mr. Stephen Mallett. I'm excited because I haven't talked to him in the new year. I saw him. He came to my LA show, and so it was so nice to see some good friends and family there. It's always fun to see friends after a show. But yeah, he'll be coming in here any second. Aha! There he is. How you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing so good.
Awesome. We just played the Darkness to Light track that you recommended. Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful song.
I know. I was listening. I hopped on, and it was fun to listen to it with all of you. I definitely felt goosebumps as I was listening to it. And that scene, I don't know if you remember the scene, but that is the scene where the kids go in. Spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen Avatar. I've seen it twice now.
Wow.
The kids go in to save their parents from the ship when they're sinking. And that, remember that scene?
Yeah.
With all the glowing, the second time I saw it with Daniel Craven, and he leaned over, he's like, he for sure saw Between Twilight, because all of those glowing underwater fairies came and illuminated the wreckage, and they got out. And I remember my brain exploded at that scene. I was just like, oh my goodness. And it's been interesting to see a lot of people critique the movie and the story, and I always tell them, you know what, when I go to a movie, I base it on how I feel at the end, and that movie just like hit me like a freight train. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you've seen it too, and I'm glad you like that song.
Yeah, and I loved the movie. Like, everybody's like, "But it's going to be so long. It's so long." But I was like, "Yeah, but it almost was an exercise of just like being, because like the movie's really like it's kind of slow in the middle. For me, it got a little bit slow, but also at the same time, I didn't mind it. Like it wasn't like this high packed story all the way through. They took their time in a few moments to like embrace this world and let you flow with the movie, because the movie's like about the flow of water, and give you a second to breathe, as the characters were. And so I thought it was stunning, and just really insightful into like just connection from people to people, from people to nature. And but yeah, it was stunning at the end. It was really emotional.
Yeah, at the end when Jake's son just gives that quote about the water, how it's like in you and around you, and then like he carries him out, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It was so beautiful. And like you and I make films and we sit in VFX and we go through all these things, and I'm sure you were thinking the same thing. I'm just like, oh my goodness, how do you keep the VFX artists from like blowing their brains out? Like
yeah.
they obviously all love what they do, but like imagine being like, nah, that scene of the whale, let's tweak its fins, and when it's just like so many things to pay attention to.
Oh my gosh, yeah, can you imagine? Like that one coral, it looks fake. Like it totally pulls me out of it. But like the entire world is fake. So Daniel Craven, for everybody who's listening, is an amazing VFX artist that did work with us on Between Twilight and Till the Light Goes Out and Lose You Now, and basically almost everything we've done VFX on in our collaborations. Tell me if I'm missing any important ones, but he's amazing.
Yeah.
What did he think of? Was he just like mind blown?
Yeah, he was mind blown. Him and I, it was funny. We actually were seeing it. We went on a bro date. We saw it the second time together. We went to the Chinese theater in Hollywood on that massive screen. Yeah, and we we were both just sitting there like trying not to disturb, but like he would just turn over and be like, "It's so perfect. Like there's nothing wrong ever." And we're just like, "I know."
There's that
I'm
oh, sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No, you go.
I was gonna say, being an artist and like a creator, there's like this fine line sometimes where you're like really appreciating and loving something, but then it can tip the scale a little too far, where it starts to be almost discouraging to watch something super magnificent that's in your lane. Like, do you ever feel that? Like, I definitely feel it probably the strongest when I go to concerts. I love going to shows. I love seeing other artists like excel and be their best and entertain. I feel like there's always something to be learned, and I find it beautiful. But then there's also a little part of me that I have to make sure it doesn't go into that place of feeling like, well, I could never do that. Like my show probably wouldn't do for people. Like, I could never make people feel the way they're making me feel. Like, so I don't know, as an artist, do you feel that way? And if so, like, how do you manage that feeling?
Yeah, I feel that 100%. It used to really get to me, especially because social media forces us all to compare each other, which is terrible.
Yeah.
But the thing that I changed, it took me about a year, is when I'd scroll past something that was so incredible, and I was like, man, that's the level I want to be at currently. I know I can make that, but I'm not making it, and blah, blah, blah. I changed it to, you know what? That person's amazing, and I'm so happy for them. And I'm so happy for that, like I'm so happy for this band. I'm so happy for that filmmaker. Just being like a fan, turning off the I'm a creator in the industry and going back to like the 10-year-old version of yourself, which is hard to do. But there's a lot of times where I'll be doing, like, let's say I'm doing any kind of project and I'm like, oh, this is hard and I don't know about this. And I often like, dude, what would 17-year-old Steven be saying about this project you're doing right now?
Yeah. No, that's so true. And, mindset is so powerful. And just like you said, like there's automatic reactions like that our mind has just done so many times. And if the pattern of your thoughts goes quickly from admiration into immediately switching over to like jealousy or discouragement about yourself or comparison in a bad way, like it's a pattern that you've made. And it's going to keep happening unless, like you said, when you see something or experience something, unless you make a conscious choice to like say, no, like I'm going to create a new pattern, and I'm going to say today that I'm so happy for that person, and I'm going to stay in admiration, and I'm going to channel my thought in a different direction, because it'll just go where it's always gone unless you decide. So I think that's a really powerful point you just shared. Like you decided, I want to make it go somewhere else.
Yeah, I want to be a fan, and I'm gonna comment, I'm gonna support, I'm gonna share it. And then and it's weird because social media, like we started with dial-up and AIM, and it was so fun, and then MySpace, and it was all about like, hey, we're all connected. And then it was almost like all of a sudden we're like, wait, why are we all so like why is this all so confusing, and I'm so like emotional, and what's going on with my brain? And so it's like and most people are only sharing the greatest stuff in their life. So it's like it's a very interesting head game that I have a son and another son on the way, and I'm terrified to try to parent them with social media. I have no idea how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that is a terrifying thought. It's just so different now from when we were littles.
Yeah. It's going to be like, here's your Nokia phone with Snake. You can have the same phone that I had first.
Yeah. Okay? Oh, when you were saying like we see everybody's like the best of their life, I had a thought at the very end of last year. I was putting together this little reel that was just, for Instagram and TikTok, showing kind of the highlight of my 2022. And it went to that sound that we all heard way too much, and, that's it for 2022. And then, and then everybody showed all their cool pictures and stuff. And as I was making that, I was like, wow, last year was a pretty emotional year for me. Like I went through a lot of ups and downs and highs and lows, but like, I was like, what we need to do more is not just focus on showing the rest of the world our highlight reel, but like reminding yourself that like we all live, we all have so many magical things and wonderful things and beautiful things that happen in our lives every day. And it's all about, someone was recently saying that, I think on a podcast I heard, if you journaled and told the story of the hardest part of your last year only, and that became a book, it'd be a really sad book, but you could also write a completely different story that would be full of adventure and love and happiness and joy if you just focused on the positive. And so it's like we have two conflicting narratives, and it's all about like, are you only focusing on showing the rest of the world your highlight reel, or are you showing yourself your own highlight reel?
Yeah, no, I mean, you nailed it. And I started sharing some stuff on my story from the year, and then I was like, you know what, this is going to be my scrapbook. So I made the longest story I've ever made, but I went in like my archive and I was like, same thing, because the later half of the year was definitely like a roller coaster for me. But then I'm like, oh, we made this cool video, and oh, like I went to Disneyland with my family. Why should I ever complain about anything I'm going through? And I did take a pause because I was showing all the good stuff, and then I like popped up there with a selfie video, and I'm like, just so you know, this is like I went through crazy mental health struggles this year, and I was like, this is not a fantasy. Like, so I kind of tried to break it up. Like, let me pause this and make sure like my life isn't a fantasy. So yeah. I threw that in there, and then I ended up saving that story as a video. So I have like a half-hour 2022 little video I can watch sometime.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I saw that because you had tagged me in it, I think, for Snow Waltz, and I think something else that I can't even remember what else we did together this year. But
Love Goes On and On, and your show. I went to your show.
That's right. Yeah, we had 3 good moments awesome
Yeah.
moments of adventures.
Yeah.
But yeah, and okay, so I want to back up for a second because I was like, man, I know Steven so well, I feel like, but I actually don't even know like your origin story or like how you came to be in LA as a filmmaker with your own production company. Like, that's such a dream for so many people to, one, come to LA, but to do what they love and to do it on a big scale and work with creatives. So like, kind of like, have you always wanted to be a filmmaker? And then what was it that like led you to be able to have your own company now?
Yeah. Those are really good questions. I definitely was like, I would make movies with my parents, like VHS camera and action figures. And I took it to the extreme where one time I put like red food coloring in a spray bottle. And when I had like an action figure die, I like sprayed red food coloring on the lens. and then my parents were like, "What are you doing? You're gonna ruin our camera." And then I wiped it off. It was all good.
It's so funny.
But yeah, but yeah, and then like I made because we had the same like era, the mini DV camera,
Oh
or the
yeah.
high 8 cameras. Um, I had one that had a stop motion feature on it, and I made like little claymation movies. And then in more in like I mean, I was always doing it, and then in high school, my teachers would like they'd assign us like a final project or write an essay for this thing, and I'd always ask them like, "Hey, can I make a movie instead of writing an essay?" Because I felt like at least the school system I was in, the essays were all about the format. Like you had to follow this format, and if you didn't
Mhm.
follow the format, you got a bad grade. And I was like, but I'm more of like a poetic thinker, I guess. So I would make these movies and I would go all out. I'd shoot them, I'd edit them in Pinnacle Studios on a PC. I'd burn them to a DVD with a DVD menu, and I printed a label on the DVD and a case. I went so hard
Wow.
on it. and then and my parents had a portable DVD player, and I would bring it in and plug that in. And like, no joke, I feel like my teachers, I'd have like maybe a C or a B. Like my C would go to a B, and my B would go to an A because I felt like my teachers were like, oh, this like ADD daydreamer kid, like this is how
Mhm.
this is his form of communication. And that's really what it's been, is like it's been my way of expressing myself and sharing how I feel on the inside with the outside. Um,
Yeah.
and then and then from there I went to a college in my hometown and studied film. It's a little tiny school called Moore Park College, and they have a zoo there. If anyone wants to go to a zoo, I kid you not, you can get closer to a lion at this zoo than any other zoo in LA.
Oh.
Um, and there's no, there's no line. So right around when I was doing that, then I started working as a production assistant on like studio movies. Like I worked on The Dark Knight Rises with Chris Nolan. I worked on The Lone Ranger with like Johnny Depp. I worked on this fun movie called We Bought a Zoo.
Oh, I love that movie.
You've seen that movie?
Yeah, it's so sweet.
It's super sweet, right? So I was like, on the set, and when I was an assistant, like when they'd be like, "Hey, we need someone to come hold the dolly cable for 12 hours," I was like, "Me, put me in, coach." And I would, I'd stand there and just observe and just watch the director, watch the actors, watch the cinematographer, and then I'd go into the gaffer's trucks. What's this? What's that? I was definitely that, like, I started doing this when I was like 20, and I was that, annoying kid that was like, teach me everything I could possibly know. And then I was just you know crazy enough to be like, I'm going to start my own production company. And boy, was that learning experience, because I know you can relate to this. It's like I essentially mastered the right side of my brain and creativity.
Oh,
But
right.
then when it comes time to like, you own a business entity, you own taxes, there's labor laws, there's budgets, there's deadlines, there's crazy clients, there's crazy crew members, there's people trying to steal money from you. It's like
Mm.
nuts. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how it all came. And my business wouldn't be successful without my wife, Brooklyn. Her and I run it together, and wouldn't be what it is without her. So that's it. I'm trying not to talk too much, but that's kind of that's like my Frodo Baggins origin story.
No, that's amazing. First of all, your wife Brooklyn is incredible. I love her so much, and she is so smart and such a boss and just brilliant. And she's also an artist herself. That yet she has mastered both sides of the brain. Like I'm a lot more like you, where I have like I'm very lean into the creative side. And yeah, you realize when you have your own business that, oh my gosh, like no one told me that to be an artist you need to know how to like, be a business manager, basically.
Yeah.
I also just, I relate so much to your like story about how you, in the early days when there were just those little mini DV cameras and like, figuring out how to make something cool with like basically like, no tools. I love the water bottle story. That's in food coloring. But yeah, I just think that, that time of figuring things out with very few tools, is what has made me stay so scrappy and creative to this day. And that's one thing I like about working with you is I feel like you're also down to get very like scrappy and figure it out and make it work. And that's not always the case in LA when you're working with different directors and different production companies. Like, not everybody's down to just get scrappy and do some of the gritty work and figure it out.
For sure. Like not everyone's done. People get spoiled and comfortable, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm not going back to this." But I think that's like as even as hard as it can be, I love it, and it's cool. It's cool that we're like very much so cut from the same cloth in that sense, and I think we've both been shooting and editing simultaneously, and. Do you remember on the mini DV, did you ever have to deal with like dropped frames? Because when you capture, you had to play it and you had to let the whole thing play for the computer to absorb it. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know, like I would also, my first like paid gig is I shot my aunt's wedding. I think I was 12. I have a picture of it on my Instagram. It's pretty funny. And I remember things like I'd get dropped frames where like there was an error, so then I have to rewind, do another capture from the same in point, out point. Do you remember this struggle?
Yeah, the in point, out point. Like we had it jimmy rigged. Somehow I would like take our VCR and move it over and like put this mini DV in a adapter that would make it the size to fit. Yeah. VCR that I had like unplugged from our family's TV. And I remember my was being like, Lindsay, put the VCR back. And I'd be like, I'm sorry. Like I used it last night. Like, but yeah, like you said, rewinding it to recapture it if it didn't work good in a spot. And like, in real time watching it, like so much. So, and also if you save, like there was no auto save back then. So did you ever have your project just crash and like you lost like all of your project?
Yeah, which it did. Because I mean, when you're on a PC, you were probably on a PC in the early days too, right? Not a Mac, or were you on a Mac?
PC.
Yeah. I remember. I had all kinds of PCs just die.
Yes.
So you Gen Z TikTokers, you will never know the struggle of what we had to do to make content. You guys just push a button and it's there. No shade though. You guys are awesome. I love you Zoomers, but you gotta give us old millennials some love.
I posted. You should post some of those old little videos that if you like.
I will.
Somewhere like there's some charming about those. Like, yeah, you should definitely. I posted like some of my friends' music videos that we made when we were like, 14 and editing.
I saw.
They're hilarious, but it's like I almost have to explain in the description, like, okay, you guys don't understand how hard this was to make, like, because like you just can't have an appreciation for what it would have taken back then.
No. In my school, because sometimes our teachers would assign video assignments, and like in my school, there was one other person who was doing the same thing I was doing, who would kind of like, nowadays everyone is on their phone shooting stuff, so it's super interesting. And I do think that's why you and I have, like you said, we've done amazing, like incredible things together, because of we're both scrappy, and I think it comes from working with very little. And I think being able to edit and knowing how to edit as you're shooting is like key. And as a producer, excuse me, sometimes I produce for directors who don't edit. And I mean, there have been times where like, I'm like, okay, we'll hire this editor, get it done. I'm on another project. We get the cut back, and I'm just like, give me the hard drive. I can't, like, I'm going to waste more time trying to get notes across to this editor than just doing it myself. And that's not even like, I don't want to do that, but you know how it is. It's like, it's tough, but I feel like you and I have similar approaches to edit, and it's been really cool, like learning each other's editing style as we collaborate on things. Cause I think we've both touched on it. When I'm editing, I'm like, I think Lindsey will like this. And you've told me that you kind of think the same thing. So that's always fun.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember we met when I was, about to release a Christmas album, but I was also on Dancing with the Stars. And so I was so overextended and so exhausted. And I remember, we had to make some music videos and I had to find time to film them. But I was like, I do not have the bandwidth to edit like 3 music videos right now. Like I was just, I was getting ready for tour. I was on Dancing with the Stars. And I remember when you did the edit for Carol of the Bells, and I was just I was so worried about it because like you said, in the past, anytime I tried to have anyone edit with, a project, I would just end up having to redo the whole thing from scratch. But I remember being like, and actually with the other 2 videos, I did have to go back and re-edit them, or at least really tweak them. But I remember yours came in and I was like, oh my gosh, this is stunning. This is beautiful. And I was excited. And, I made a few tiny tweaks, and then like, and since then it's been nice that if I'm ever in a pickle, like for, one of our recent projects, it was nice that I was like, I do trust Steven as an editor. And I never say that. Like, I don't trust anybody to edit my stuff. So it has, that was one of the reasons I was like, I want to work with this guy more. He's a great, like, he tells stories the way I like to tell stories.
Oh, well, thank you. And I remember that Carol of the Bells edit. I was like, I went through that thing with a fine tooth comb. That was a tricky one because it was everything we got was money. It looked great. And it's funny you bring that up because one of my early memories of you was that shoot, and you walked into this giant warehouse and you were coming up towards us, the crew. And I remember you had these like slide sandals on, and you just walked right up and you stared at the big, remember those huge windows?
Yeah.
And you were like so locked in, but I knew you were doing a lot of things. And I was like, damn, this girl is like doing a lot right now. And here she is making a video. Like, it was really funny. It was an awesome memory. Like, props to you. But it was funny. Like, you stared at this building for a good minute, and then you like looked at us and said hi.
Really? Oh gosh, wow. Yeah. Personable.
Yeah. No, but it was like this is this girl's focus. And then I do remember too, like a lot of the times I'll shoot like rehearsals, like, okay, let's just rehearse, move the camera. And then the first take, we were doing a rehearsal. In your mind, you thought I was rolling. And then I was like, cool. And you were like, wait, we weren't rolling? And you were also injured. And I remember I was like,
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I remember that. And okay, so when I get really like, when I have to be focused because I'm doing too much, and like the first thing to go, I always joke, is my personality. I go on autopilot and I go on like survival mode, and I become a very serious person when I'm in that zone. And so you met like serious version of Lindsey, but also I do remember when we did a take, and you guys thought it was a rehearsal. I thought it was a real take, and I had just basically ripped my rib out of its place
Yes.
2 days before, and I remember. I looked at you guys and I was like, hey, if I'm moving, you have to film because I've only got a couple in me before I can't do it anymore because again. And so I was like, if I move, you have to film.
Yeah, I remember. And I remember being like, I'm so sorry. I will always film you. And I don't think we've ever done a rehearsal since then. We're always just like, let's go.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, you didn't meet me at my best, that's for sure. But
no, but like don't even take it that way. It was awesome. And prior to that, I've been around so many shoots that I took it as like, she is locked in and she is doing a lot. Like, damn, I respect. It was like, damn, respect. I didn't see it as like that at all.
Oh, well, you're so nice. I have such weird like that was such a foggy time, to remember. But yeah, there's these little things. I'm like, oh, I do remember that, or I do remember that. I have a question for you. Since we've worked on, let's try to name all the projects we've worked on. So like,
I made a list.
Oh, okay, yeah, list them off because it's a lot.
I came prepared. It's a lot. Okay, and I might be missing something, but Carol of the Bells, First Light, Artemis, Till the Light Goes Out, Between Twilight, String Sessions with Bishop Briggs, Home for the Holidays, which I broke it down. That has 16 pieces of content, like 16 scenes essentially.
Yeah.
Then Lose You Now, League of Legends, Lords, Genshin Impact, Masquerade, Over the River with Pentatonics.
That's
yeah. Snow Waltz and all the ASUS projects, and that comes out to an even 30.
Dang. That's
right?
Insane. That's a lot of things. I mean, it's crazy though that as a creative, when you find someone that like you really mesh well with, and you also not only like do I feel like I work well with you, but you've built a team of people that says so much about who you are. I think that the people that people choose to keep around them is like a definition of who they are. And you have such an amazing like team that you have brought together, and it's you've built something really interesting.
Thank you. Well, I always tell people that like I want to make movies, TV shows, and Lindsey Stirling videos. That's like
woo woo.
that's what I want to do.
What?
Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Keep going. Then I have a question.
Oh, I was gonna say like a lot of there are certain filmmakers who view music videos as like a part-time thing and then they jump up, but like I love them so much. They are, because I can't play an instrument, making them, it almost feels like it's kind of my instrument to some degree. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm curious, out of all the projects we've worked on, or maybe we start, I think both of us think that Home for the Holidays is our favorite. We've talked about it, but outside of Home for the Holidays, or even if it's just one number or one segment from Home for the Holidays, but what's maybe your favorite like project we've ever done?
Oh man, that is so hard.
I know it is hard.
That's really hard. I think because I'm like, I grew up on Dragon Ball Z and Lord of the Rings, I think I'm gonna have to go with Till the Light Goes Out. Just that harnessed like so much of my passions, and I'm also like a huge Game of Thrones fan. But it's like neck and neck with Between Twilight and of course Home for the Holidays. The whole Artemis universe, it's like I almost bundled that into one. But if I had to choose one, till the light goes out. It's also that excuse me, that was the most difficult shoot I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I think you can feel the same.
Yes, I think that will always be the music video that I think I'll probably always be the most proud of. It was such an undertaking, and it was, I think, a 16-hour day that we locked it all into.
It was.
And, you know, shooting everything from fight scenes to like choreography to performance scenes to like dancing in these like rock formations. Like, it was so much content and story. That's the biggest part. It had a story. That one was like just such an undertaking, and then all the VFX that were practical on set, like it was I don't know, kind of just mind-blowing. While I was working on it there on set with you, I was like, wow, we're creating something really outlandish here. This is cool, you know?
And I have like memories of when we were lighting the cave. I have, because you remember the long cave, right? Obviously.
Oh yeah.
The Genie crew was like setting up lights, and you know, we were getting scrappy. Like we had generators, like a couple different generators placed throughout to give us power. And I'll never forget, they had like thrown up a light. It was getting tweaked. It had this like red light, and I walked through the tunnel, and on the other end was Jeff. And we were both like booking it through the tunnel, and we just didn't even say anything to each other. And I felt I felt like I was in like a foxhole after like going to war. And to any veterans out there, yeah, we're not soldiers, thank you for your service. But it does get to the point where you're like, it's, I don't know, it's hard to explain, like the amount of adrenaline in your body. You're like not hungry, it's all shutting down, it's like nuts, you know?
Well, and I remember, you know, we were pushing right up against the wire, and literally we could not go over because the park rangers were going to lock our stuff in the park, you know, if we didn't get out right on time. And I remember we had time to film, I think, 2 takes of the dance choreography, which is insane. Usually, I mean, Steven, we usually do like 8 takes for one section.
I know.
We had time to do 2 takes, and I just remember looking at the girls, like the dancers, and being like, all right, guys, we get 2 takes, we have to nail it. And they all just like, you know, they're little warriors, so they were like, absolutely, we got you. And they were, of course, perfect. And I remember, thank heavens, we had like one of the best cinematographers in the business, Neil's there, and you know, he just filmed the heck out of it. And I just remember being like, amazed when I was editing it that those 2 takes carried through the whole video. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that worked.
I know, I remember that. And not only did they kill it, you killed it. The only time you ever make any kind of, I can't even call it an error, is if your wardrobe gets caught on your violin. I don't think I've ever seen you mess up once, but it's only like if your wig gets caught or if your costume gets caught, that's it.
Oh, you're so nice. The amount of times that I like look at the dancers and like, well, we need to do that again. But you know, it's always, we're always your worst critic.
No, I know what you're saying, but like,
well, thank you.
I mean, you guys spoil me. You're at like the top tier. It's so special. And I've told you this before. It's like, it's interesting when we link up, like, we link up and we get into this like pressure cooker to make a project. And it's from the beginning to the end, it's like such a pressure cooker, and then everyone goes on their merry way. And it's like, that was the cool thing about the Home for the Holidays, is I feel like I got to get a tiny taste of what like going on the Lindsey Stirling tour was like. And you know, we were able to have like a little more fun, and I got to know your whole team, which is, your team's amazing. And, you know, when I see you guys out on tour, I'm like, I have FOMO. I'm like, I want to eat snacks in the bus and like hang out. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But,
you know, that was like, I mean, I'll always say this, that was just one of the most that was the most special project I've ever worked on, you know, Home for the Holidays. Just the timing, how it came at the end of 2020 when, you know, we were all just, we'd all been locked inside. We all had been like, you know, craving to be creative again, and to get to kind of combine two, I feel like, of my worlds, like my love of creating film, you know, and videos, and working with like your team, which I consider like, you know, a family in its own, and then to bring my tour family into it, and combine like two sides of my artistry into like one big moment, and you know, to do it for a whole, like, what was it, how many days was it 7 days or
something like 7? Yeah, and yeah, no, I agree. If I were to say like what's the most special project, that's the most special project. It's truly like a life highlight. And like I told you too, in my hometown, which you've been to, we were editing the holiday special there for a little bit. On that street during Christmas, I set up a screen and I project all of our holiday content. We have a little Christmas parade at our hometown.
Oh, that's
and
so
yeah, it's really special. And I project the special, I project Carol the Bells and Snow Waltz, and like I remember this year I was playing the Grinch. I have some on my story. I'll send it to, or I'll post. I'll send it to you. And like these little kids were dancing, and a mom grabbed her kid and swung her around in a circle. And then the most vivid memory I had last year is there was this old woman in a wheelchair. She was kind of slumped over, like clearly. I don't know how to describe that. I don't want to be insensitive. But she had the biggest smile on her face watching the special and watching all of our holiday videos. And like I remember picking her out in this big crowd of people, and like she just had this huge smile, and that smile went on for like a good 15 minutes before they left. So that was cool. And then like even putting it out live during the pandemic, and like seeing all the comments, and just knowing that even when we did like the flash mob with the fans that we surprised, like, that, and you know, and they were like crying, it was like we brought Christmas joy on full blast. It was awesome.
Yeah, that one was, it was so special. It was, and you know, we got to do it again though. I got a new Christmas album, Steven. So I feel like we need
to. We were talking about it.
I know.
I had that idea where like your bus breaks down and you look over and there's a forest, and it's like, oh no, guys, Lindsey saw a forest, and then we're all like chasing after you into the forest.
Right. That's where I come alive.
I'm down. Yep.
I know.
You know where to find me.
I do. I know where to find you. Yeah, we've gotten to make, like, I just feel so fortunate and so blessed all the time when I just think about all the things that, you know, we've gotten to create and gotten to share. And like you said, that woman's smile, it's like, man, that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. It is. And seeing your Christmas tour was amazing. I was devastated because I missed the Artemis tour because of COVID was searching, and I have a baby, and I was like, I'm not really afraid of this, but I think I should be careful. Ugh. But I got to see this tour. Yeah, it was horrible, but I got to see this tour, and it was so fun to see you guys up there, and the way you've leveled up. I'm like, oh, now her dancers are flying in the air. Okay, here we are.
Here we go. That's what we do.
Here we go.
Bring it on.
Awesome.
Well, here, I think we should play another song. You suggested several. I have pulled up Crying While You're Dancing, Just Pretend, or Kickflip. Is there one of those you would like to introduce? And
well, man, it's a tough decision. You should play, we just released this music video that I produced, and for a really cool artist named Eniko. The song is The King's Affirmation, and this video came out today. It's right up your alley.
Oh man, well I'll have to. So that one wasn't available on AMP for some reason.
Oh,
I don't
okay,
know if
okay.
they uploaded
Is
it
that the
yet.
only one?
That's the
Is
only
that the
one
only
that
one?
wasn't available on AMP. But I did
Okay,
see
well,
you posting some stuff about that coming out. So it already came out or it's coming out?
yeah, it's
Oh,
out. It's out.
okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to
it's
check out the music video. The artist looks really cool.
yeah, she's very cool. You guys would vibe. You're both fantasy buffs. Um, so let's see. Well, because you're killing it on TikTok, um, this band, that song "Just Pretend,"
Mm-hmm.
um, their band called Bad Omens, which I actually saw at the Under Oath show that you and I were hanging out at.
Oh
That's
yeah.
where where I discovered them. So it's interesting because they're I guess you could say they're a bit of a heavier band, but I saw them again, and before they played this song, they're like, hey, "Don't hate on us because you're all metalheads, but this song is blowing up on TikTok," and
Oh.
it's just funny how they're like, "We're a heavy band, we're not on TikTok," but they're like, "But aren't you excited that like a good piece of music is viral on TikTok?"
Right,
So
right. No shade. Come on, guys.
yeah, exactly. So I think you should check that out, and I'd be curious what you would do to that TikTok song.
Okay, well, I will have to look it up and see what's going on the TikTok, do my research. Because you know me, I've sold my soul to TikTok, and I actually quite
You're
enjoy it.
killing it, man. I saw you start that and like blow it up very quickly. So I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you. It's been fun. I have to put my filmmaker cap off a little bit in order to, you can't. It's a different kind of filmmaking, I guess you could say.
It is, and I think I'm just now gonna kind of start dabbling in it because I was for the longest time, and like when a dog turns its head, like, huh?
Uh-huh.
I'm still observing and yeah, but yeah, this song for everyone listening is I grew up on a lot of like hardcore emo metal, but I've always liked going into like this Avatar from Darkness to Light. Like I've liked this music that can take me into a heavy space, but then bring you into the light. Because there's certain like metal where it's just like blah, 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 the whole time, and I'm like, no, thank you. So yeah, this is from my bleeding emo elder heart for you guys.
I love it. Okay, this is Just Pretend from Bad Omens. Let's take a listen. Ooh, that was good. That was giving me some of my own emo vibes. Oh, I think you have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Okay, I'm back.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm so happy you liked it, and it's cool listening to this, like, because I feel all the people listening. Like I feel very connected to everybody. It's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and there's also a chat feature, so if you click on that, you can see like everybody's digging it.
I know. I was reading the chat, and I'm like, this is so cool. So yeah, I'm curious. What would you? I mean, if you can say I liked it, cool. But I'm curious if your musician brain. I'm curious what you thought of it.
Yeah, no, I like kind of like you said, I can't go too heavy with music because then it starts to get edgy. Like I'm like I feel like I can't feel the hope in it. Like you were saying, kind of exact same thing. But I thought that song was beautiful because it felt uplifting in the heaviness. Like the heaviness was like taking you somewhere, and I can totally rock out to that kind of music. And it's funny, I don't listen to that much of that genre anymore, like that emo and like kind of heavier emo rock. But whenever I hear it, I'm always like, yeah, I like this. Why don't I listen to this more? It's kind of like
there's
Greek food.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I also feel like with our upbringing, we have this kind of like there's this specific energy signal that it's like beautiful, uplifting, epic, spiritual. And I feel like no matter what, I'm always going for that. Even if the subject of the song might or the lyrics might be a little sad, but like even if you wanted to keep the emo train going, this song "Crying While You're Dancing," I saw them on tour with Bad Omens, and the singer, he did post, because he jokes, who's going to come cry at our tour, but it's kind of a joke, you know what I mean? And he posted this beautiful post where he was like, you know, I'm okay, I'm doing well, but just so you know, when I was young, music was like because he had an abusive mother, and like music was his pocket, his outlet to feel safe. And that feeling, what he felt when he was young, like, will kind of always be with him. So it's like his outlet. But I'm curious what you think of Crying While You're Dancing, because this dude has both of these bands have insane voices, and they both sound great live. But yeah, I don't know if everyone is feeling that one. I might suggest doing Crying While You're Dancing real quick, and then maybe like taking a break from music. I don't know. It's your show. I'm not trying to.
Hey, no, I like. Let's listen to "Crying While You're Dancing." I'm excited to hear it because I did really enjoy that last one. So, everybody, chat it away to tell us what you think of this one too. Ooh, I liked it. I also think I agree with Allie's comment where he has like a really distinct and unique voice.
He does, right? And he shared a super touching. Whoop, can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. He shared a touching story at his show that his father was a singer, and his father had recently passed away, and it was super beautiful. And I know you've gone through this with your dad, but you know, he was like, he fought so hard, and he was an amazing singer. And then I don't believe it was this song that he dedicated to him, but you know, he's like the son of a singer. And this genre, like, I hold to a high standard, because sometimes you'll go see these bands and they're horrible live. At least the singer. Like, sometimes the production is good, but like that music, it's super technical, it's aggressive. And then when you're there and they can actually sing, for me, I'm always like, oh hell yeah, get me to the mosh pit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm so glad you liked it. I'm glad everyone else liked it too.
Yeah, those are great. I like also just the concept of like crying while you're dancing. It feels almost like such a contradiction, because dancing is seen as like the happiest form of like self-expression, is if you know, to be able to put yourself out there and move freely and dance, like it feels like such a happy thing. And so like to even imagine yourself like crying while also freely dancing is like just an interesting, like that would be such an interesting state to be in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, yeah, I've definitely danced around to that song doing dishes in my slippers, and just felt it really hard. And just what you brought up, you know, like some days are sad days, and I think you know, I think creative people can feel it super intensely, because like you said, you go on tour and you do magic for a long time, and then when it stops, you're like, you know, you have to put your bag of magic away, and then you kind of have to just like go back to eating a food and putting it in the dishwasher. And this sounds really weird to anyone listening, but like sometimes, for me at least, the most simple things are very, very hard. And you can ask my wife. Love her, I drive her crazy. But like, you know, like back in the day before I was married, come like, you know, Saturday, I would just explode. My stuff would be everywhere after working and shooting all week, and I would just be like a puddle on the couch with the remote, like, don't talk to me, don't call me. And sometimes there will be maybe like every third Saturday, I'll do that, and she comes home and she's just like, what is going on in here? I'm like, sorry. A mess, because like my son makes a mess and then I make a bigger mess, and yeah, but God bless her. But yeah.
So how do you deal with like your mental health? Because do you have any go-to practices or things that have helped you with kind of the highs and lows that I think the industry accentuates, but also just like you said, being an artist, like part of our craft is the ability to feel things and to be able to express those feelings. And so you have to feel deeply. You have to unlock that part of yourself. So like, are there things that help you in your mental health, like any practices or just anything?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've basically was diagnosed with depression when I was like freshman year in high school is when it started getting bad. And back then they didn't have, I feel like at least in my area, they didn't have as much research on anxiety. And if I even go back to fourth grade, I used to get horrible stomach aches in fourth grade. And we thought that I had like something inside my stomach or whatever. But looking back, it was anxiety. So parents out there, if your kids have terrible stomach aches, look into it. So for me, it was always this, it was definitely a journey where, obviously it was situational. Like when I was in the zone doing what I was really good at, I was okay. But then like anytime I was somewhere where I didn't like excel naturally, it was interesting because as a kid, it was kind of like, okay, well, this is what my life is. And I remember in high school, I tried one medication and it had a really bad side effect. It like gave me this super dry mouth. It was very weird. Back then, I didn't have a lot of experience with medication. So I was like, okay, I'm done with that. And then, so throughout my life, like I've gone off and on medication in search of the right one. When I had my son 2.5 years ago, I had a very scary, it felt like I getting heavy, everybody get ready, but don't worry, we're getting to the other side. So I'm good now. But it felt like I was on a Zoom. I had this really weird headache. My ears started ringing. The whole room turned white. I'm like, oh, am I dying? Is this the end? And it was 2021. It was like kind of like it was after the Christmas special. It was after like the holiday. I had nothing going on and wasn't on medication at this time. So I went to my doctor and she's like, you just had a vascular headache induced by anxiety. So yeah, so like being I'm kind of in this position where like prior to this, I was like a CBD guy. I've had great experiences with psilocybin or certain other healing plant medicine that's always gotten me farther. But like this most recent instance was bad. It was they don't talk about it a lot, but men can get postpartum mental illness from having kids. And my son was born he was in the bleak of the pandemic. There was like not a vaccine in sight. So I was like, I have a kid to raise. I have a business to run. So I didn't like the headspace I was in. So ultimately, long story short, worked with my doctor for almost a solid like 2 years now. And, that plus working out, I do CrossFit almost every other day. And I play pickup basketball on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's kind of my current way to stay sane, I guess you can say. And then I love that you do breath work. I joined you on some breath work too.
Oh yeah.
So I think, yeah. So I'd say basketball is probably my biggest breath work because it's like, it's so mentally stimulating that it's the most cardio I ever do. I'm sure you feel this way after tours, but like when I'm done playing a game of basketball, my like brain is like, I can feel blood pumping everywhere in my whole body. And like basketball is the only thing that can like get me there.
That's awesome. And I think that, it's just so cool. I love hearing what people's mental health practices are because it's so different from person to person, like the fact that basketball helps you with your mind is like so cool. I have to agree with you. Just my timeline of the pandemic was very similar and very different experience. But like the darkest, hardest part of the pandemic for me was January and February of 2021. Like that's when I had my breakdown as well. Like that was a really hard time, I think, for so many people because it was like, when is this going to end? Like, that's when all my energy of creating projects like ran out. And I was like, I can't keep spinning my wheels with no traction anymore. Like,
same. And it was like, oh, maybe I need to process that I just went through a global catastrophic event, and I still, like, we pushed through. Like, the show must go on. Like, we kept it going. And I remember I left home for the holidays. On home for the holidays, I was doing budgets and preparing for Pentatonic's holiday music videos. So on the ride home, Fishman was driving our car. Like, I was on my laptop producing those as well. And then yeah, and so same thing. It was like, and it was a Zoom. So, you know, out of all things. But I'm looking at the chat here, and someone says, how does one even decide if medication is the right choice? I've seen, don't shame medication, but remember, medication isn't always the answer. You know, the thing is here's what I'll say, because like I said, I've been the guy that's been like, no, I do the CBD, I do the micro dosing, I do all sorts of things. Well, I got to a point where it was very scary to be in my head. I didn't like the thoughts I was having. I'll spare you guys too much of the dark details, but I was having trouble sleeping. I had pains in my chest. I had all kinds of physical problems. And, you know, my doctor broke it down very simple. Like, you can live your life without medication, but your life will be harder. And, you know, there's such a stigma on mental health that, like, part of me almost, I remember I told someone, like, yeah, I just, you know, threw in the towel and I'm on medication now. But it's the thing you have to realize, like, if you have a broken bone, would someone be like, oh, you know, putting a cast on that, like, putting a cast on your broken bone isn't the answer. It's like, it is a disease, and I have like a accumulation of mental illnesses, and I have to manage them, and I have to be in a headspace where I can perform. I have to be in a headspace where I can take care of my family. And to answer some of these questions, what I did different this time is I went to the doctor and I followed up. I never missed an appointment. I would try things. For example, I tried one thing, and then, like, you know, weeks went by and all I wanted to do was sleep. So, you know, we tried something else. And you have to be willing to go through that, like a computer getting new software. And if you stop halfway through, or if you give up, or if you know, because if something's not working, there are several other things that can work. So don't ever let, like, one side effect take you down. And you can even have a side effect and eventually it will level out, but you have to be willing to put in this work the same way you would, like, where, like, if you broke your femur, you would, like, have a cast on it, you'd be in the hospital, you go to physical therapy. Like, there's such this stigma of, oh, you're weak, you're taking medication, or, oh, you're just popping the pill. No, you're actually, like, preventing a disease from hurting you. And, you know, we talk about these celebrities who take their lives. It's like, there's such a stigma around it. So it's like, you know, it's okay to be, you can be very dark in your head. You can be suicidal, and you can go to your doctor and say, I feel suicidal, please help me. They're not going to throw you in a van and take you off to Arkham Asylum. You know, they're going to help you. And I think that's something that isn't normalized. So I try to be open about it and share, but it's hard to share because it's so heavy. So thanks for having me here, because I feel this is a productive thing to do.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for sharing all of that, because yeah, I think that so many people wonder where that line is of, like, you know, and it's a line you can only know for yourself. But I've experienced being on medication. I've experienced doing natural things. I've tried all sorts of things from different practices. I've done a lot of things to figure out my mental health, like as you have. And, you know, there's a time and a place for all of it. is just what I found, like when I went on medication, I am so grateful I did. It pulled me, it was like just what I needed to pull me out of a really bad space, and taught me a lot about the difference between depression and sadness. By going on medication, I could tell like, oh, this is being sad and that's depression. Like it helped me differentiate between the two, and like taught me valuable lessons that have continued to help me. So yeah, I love, thank you for sharing so many of, the parts of your story, and, I'm being brave enough to do so. Cause like you said, it, like a lot of times people have very strong judgments about these things, and it's frankly, it's no one's business besides yours and your doctor,
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone in the comments saying nice things. Yeah, thank you. It got to the point where I was just like, once I started getting help, I was like, oh my goodness, it's been pretty bad for a long time. And you really can, getting a panic attack, like, yeah, I know you've had panic attacks, like getting a panic attack more like a couple times a week and just learning to like that, you know what I mean? Like
you're getting them a couple times a week?
At one point, but they weren't full blown. They were minor. They were minor. So I was like, back in the day, I had this like CBD vape, and I would like, that would help. It would alleviate it. But then it would get triggered so easily. Like the littlest things would trigger panic. And then after a certain amount of time, it was like the type of panic attack where for me, like the back of my lungs hurt and I feel shortness of breath. And then I'm like, I'm like, let's just make this go away. And it took a while, but it's like, man, I can't remember the last time I felt panic. I'll get a little bit of anxiety because that's life, but like, you can work at it and make all that stuff go away if you want it. If you want to put in the work, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and it's definitely the most valuable work that I've ever done, because at the end of the day, if you can't be happy, like what's the point of all the dreams you face, if you can't enjoy them, all the things you reach. And actually, I've actually very fortunately only had a handful, like in one hand, a little handful of anxiety attacks in my life, or panic attacks. And one of them actually was with you. It was right before I got to the set of Between Twilight. I had an absolute like insanity level panic attack, and it's terrifying.
I remember. Yeah. I remember Fishman was there, and we have our Silver Shift Pod tent. That if you guys see behind the scenes, you might see the Shift Pod somewhere. You know what I'm talking about, the little silver dome?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember like Fishman came out and she's like, okay, here's what's going on. And having gone through that, I was like, all right, as much time as you need. We'll go get creative. We'll take this light bulb and run around with it and get very B-roll.
You guys took Derek. You're like, we'll start with Derek, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll start with Derek, and yeah, you can't. And that was like, that was the day after shooting Till the Light Goes Out.
Right.
We really pushed that shoot to the brink of oblivion. And I remember, you drove to set, which most people don't. And I remember, you're so like hardworking. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna show up for work. I'm gonna drive. And I remember telling Fishman like, she should not be driving to a shoot. You need to drive her to a shoot and help her be calm, and just enjoy. I remember telling her that, like, so.
Lesson learned. I will say though, the power of just experience though, because like having you there to understand what I was going through, where I think if someone who had been helping run the shoot like hadn't ever experienced that, they might be like, wait, what's wrong with her? And I don't understand, like, she needs to come out here, we need to start, but having you being understanding and having Fish act like it was completely normal, like, she's just like, hey, this happens, hey, like, breathe, like you're, and I was like, I'm going insane, and she's like, no, you're not, like, this is fine, it happens. Having people to normalize a situation is game changing. And so like the power of just personal experience to be shared with others is like, you know, the kind of thing that I think gets us all through those moments. And so I was really glad I was surrounded by like you and Fish in that time.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you. Well, I mean, it's interesting I talk to Fish a lot on our projects. Because she, you know, she
Yeah.
is your, how do you even put a title on Fishman when it comes to your world? You know what I mean? Like,
I usually call her my assistant because I just don't know how else to like validate all the things she does. But she's,
I know.
my right
Yeah.
hand confidant.
You're right. Your right hand confidant. Yeah, because there's all kinds of times where like when I'm working on projects with you, I'm asking, you know, Jess questions and Adina and Sammy, and then I'm asking Fishman like, you know, you have a great team around yourself, and you know, Fishman and Jess and like everyone is so in tune with your mental health and your well-being, and we all really really care about you and want you to be happy and alive, because at the end of the day you're the one that gets out there and hangs by your hair, and we all watch and cover it. and yeah, so no, I think I think we are entering a good era where mental health is being more focused on, and I do love the Gen Z, because Gen Z, they don't put up with anything. They're like, nope, this is how it is, and it's you know, I think we have good momentum as a society. As dark and bleak as things get, I do love seeing so much mental health awareness. You know, and I'm just trying to be more vocal about it. So thanks for having me on. Sometimes I feel like I'm this like the dude behind the curtain for so many things. So it's fun to like come out here and I'm like a vampire coming out of the dark into the light. Hey everybody.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be here and chat with us. Like, again, I'm just so grateful for all the things we've gotten to make together. Like, you're so incredibly talented. You're kind. You're hardworking. You have an amazing, like, family of work people and your actual family that, like, you have surrounded yourself with. And I think that just, you know, says so much about who you are. So I'm grateful to you. Just, you know, I appreciate everything you shared today. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining. And I've loved also seeing the comments and the discussions that are going on in the chat as you guys continue the conversation. So I hope you guys all have a great week. And Stephen, we have to catch up soon, you know, in real life.
Yeah, in real life. Let's do this in real life. I'm so down.
Okay. All right. Well,
all right. Thank you for having me. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.